Shalom, good afternoon. Welcome to Jerusalem. I'm Avraham Shira. We're starting a new Torah today, which is always exciting. And the introduction paragraph that he uses is taken from Megillat Ruth. Ruth, the famous convert who came back to Eretz Israel with Naomi and became the grandmother of King David, who of course means that the Messiah came through her. And the Zohar teaches us the Messiah had to come with a thread of the king of Moab. And it tells us why. Why would a Jewish king have to have in his bloodline the king of Moab? Because the Zohar says a Jewish king is too nice to fight wars, too nice to go out and battle and kill thousands of people in a day. It's not a Jewish thing. But we live in a non-Jewish world, let's face it. And there's a lot of violence going on everywhere. So a Jewish king needs to have a thread of that violent streak, a thread of the power of doing war, making battle, and judging situations that are very hard to judge, where you know that people's lives are going to be lost. And every military leader knows this, and it's something we often don't think about. Well, you know, that policeman or that sergeant or that general or that colonel, whoever is making the decisions on people's lives, he's going to carry that around the rest of his life. And it's a serious deal. Okay, but nonetheless, the King David had to have a thread of Moab, and it came through Ruth. And then in her book now, we have the introduction of Ruth to Boaz, who would be her Goel, her redeemer, her personal Messiah, because he married her when she was well, let's say she was not exactly desirable, and she was called for by the laws of Yibum. She should have married one of her dead husband's relatives in order to redeem the soul of her dead husband through a new child that will be born through her. Now, this is part of the secret of the reincarnation of the Yibum. We've done classes on this. It's a known subject in the yeshiva and the Kabbalah world. However, Naomi came back with Ruth, but Ruth, she didn't really want to necessarily marry her dead husband's relative. And Boaz was the general, the judge, the leader of the generation at that time. And he was a great sage, and he sat in the gates of the city and judged the nation, and he was considered very righteous, and he was already an older man. But divine providence had it that they needed to join up in order to produce the next generation that would lead to the generations of Yishai and King David. All right. With all that said, why is this class called When God Inhabits the Mind? When God comes into a person's mind, well, we see in the Torah itself, this is taking place. When you learn Torah, you're taking Moses' book, which are the words of God given to Moses. You're taking those words in your mind, one by one. And if there's 10 words, it's 10 words worth of power, of holiness. And if it's 1,000 words, and if it's 1,000,000 words of Torah into your mind, how much closer is God's mind going to be or invested in your mind? See, it's like a software shift between the mindset that we receive from our parents and from our lifestyle and nature and nurture, but when we learn, we're not going for the common software of the day. We want the software of Hashem on how to live and how to think and how to react and how to respond to life. That's what the Torah is for. But here in the interpretation, you're going to see something very unique. And it begins in Torah Samech 65, Vayomer Boaz la Ruth, and Boaz, this ancient judge, said to Ruth, this young woman returning from exile, Hello, Shamat Biti, has my daughter not heard? Don't go gather in another field. In other words, stay by us. Because they had little mini economies with a person was wealthy, he had workers and employees, but they just didn't go home. Home was was the housing provided by their master. And he tells them, don't go anywhere else to work. And don't leave me from here. In other words, stay with us. Not just where you eat, but stay with us. Join our collective family. And your eyes are in the field where they are gathering the wheat. Why are you looking over there? He's asking her. Why are you looking in the other field? Does the wheat look better? Or maybe the young men over there that are gleaning the wheat look more interesting. And you'll go after them. Those, well, we call them reapers, I suppose, the people that go out and cut the wheat. Behold, I have already commanded the young people that are your age, the people that might want to marry you, not to touch you, to protect you. This is important back in the day. A woman was much more vulnerable back in the day than she is today. And you became thirsty. And then you went to the vessels and you drank. Where the young people are drawing the water. So this elderly wise man is giving her a whole set of instructions. What happens when you understand that Boaz is really a symbol of God speaking, and Ruth is a symbol of the Jewish people? See, we're gonna take the idea of this was a piece of Torah written by rabbis, or actually by Ruth and etc., and perhaps Boaz with his help. I'm not sure about that. I have to look it up in the Talmud. They wrote the story because it was an important story in Am Yisrael, because the rabbis knew that this was the antecedents of the great King David. However, when we read the story metaphorically, we see another whole teaching behind it. The story of God and the Jewish people. The story of how our relationship oftentimes goes. Up and down, back and forth, hungry and satisfied, etc. Single and married, with child, without children. That's our relationship with God. Is up and down. It's not a stagnant, static thing. So now we reread it. Let's reread it that way, metaphorically. Vayomer Boaz, Hashem, El Ruth, the Jewish people. God says to the Jewish people, Halo shamat biti, my daughter, my people, have you heard? Don't go to another field to cut your grain. Now, cutting grain is a metaphor for bringing life force and nourishment, which food represents, from the upper worlds. But it also can mean going to a foreign country to make a living. It could mean also going to people outside Judaism for your welfare. And God is telling the Jewish people, don't go there. And don't leave me, don't leave the camp of Israel. Jews, don't leave your roots, don't leave the past, because you are connected to me. Boaz is telling Ruth, and God is telling the Jews. And I know your eyes are in the field where the reapers are. I know you're looking outside the Jewish realm. Maybe for a wife, maybe for a job, maybe for a city, maybe for an identity. Maybe you don't even want to be Jewish, and you were born that way. What are you going to do? And God is saying to the Jewish people, I know your eyes are out there, but don't go. And you went after them. And behold, I commanded the young people, the other nations, don't hurt them. Don't hurt my people in exile. And you became thirsty in exile. And you went to the vessels. Now the vessels, of course, could be bottles of water at the convenience store. Or they could be the vessels of the upper worlds that bring spiritual nourishment to the mind and the heart and the body through the different levels of the soul. See, we have a component, we have a composite soul, has different levels. Your mind is one level, your heart is another, and your body is another, and they need different nourishment, different octane, if you will, of food. And that spiritual nourishment, well, it comes through different areas of Torah learning as well. However, God is saying, I know you're going to be thirsty in exile. I know you're going to go look outside the Jewish people, and you're going to look far. And you're going to go to the vessels to drink. Where the young people are drawing the water. Now this water is also a symbol for wisdom. And I grew up in the States, and I think a lot of Jewish people know that when you hit about 17, 18, you really start to wanting to know things. You want to learn. You want to learn wisdom. You want to go to college. You want to take all the courses you can because you want to see what's out there. Because I learned so little in high school. Or maybe I didn't read enough books. But so you see, the thirst for knowledge is built into every human being. And curiosity, is another of the powers of creation that either brings us exile or brings us redemption, revelation, or darkness. Because curiosity can take us to all the wrong places, and curiosity can take us to the throne of glory. And so the Jewish people have implanted in them this desire to know things. It is not a religion of dogma. It is a religion of investigation. And so we're going to begin a series, I call it the fake news about God, because there's been fake news about God for centuries, millennium. And I think our generation is the time to fix the story right, and to erase that old news, that old story, that old rotten narrative that they have about who the creator of the universe really is. Because that's part of our job. Because who would want to, when an atheist tells me they don't believe in God, I said, well, the God that you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. And that was a line I heard from one of my early rabbis, Rabbi Meir Abasera, Alav Shalom. And he was working with people all the time. He understood this. The God that the people were brought up with or exposed to through Christianity, through Islam, and through other religions is oftentimes a very distorted picture of this awesome, loving, infinite, eternal, patient, righteous, just, fair, merciful being that we call the Creator. So continue with us tomorrow. We're going to start this Torah in depth. It's a really deep Torah. It's going to talk about how the tzaddik goes up to heaven and receives new insights in Torah to illuminate the generation below and generations to come. And it's going to talk about also how each of us have that aspect of the tzaddik in us that is able to go up to heaven and to bring down new insight for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, and for the world, God willing. So we'll see you tomorrow. All the best to all of you.